A charity is calling for a toughening of the law on abuse of the elderly. Action on Elder Abuse Scotland wants judges and sheriffs to always take into account when sentencing that an elderly person has been targeted because they're vulnerable. The charity says abuse of older people must be seen as socially unacceptable as child or animal abuse. Aileen Clark reports.
Hazel Goodall is in her 80s. She has lost her sight and has a number of health difficulties. But being robbed of money by a relative seemed the bitterest blow of all.
Oh, my mum was absolutely devastated. She was on her hands and knees being physically sick because my mum was 82 at the time. She had breast cancer. She's registered blind.
Mrs Goodall was being cared for by her daughter-in-law, Mary Goodall, who was convicted last year at Dunfermline Sheriff Court of stealing money from her.
It could be someone who is meant to be caring for a vulnerable person, who has taken advantage of their position.
This kind of financial abuse of the elderly was very much on the agenda at this charity conference in Glasgow today. The Community Safety Minister told the conference she was open to looking at changes to legislation. An important change is what's being proposed by those who support elderly victims.
What we want is a legal requirement for judges to take into account situations where someone has been deliberately targeted because they're vulnerable. At present, it's at the discretion of the judge whether they do take these factors into account. So what we're looking for is that it's mandatory.
This family know they're not the only ones to be rocked by such a blatant breach of trust. Alison is now her mother's carer. She says her mum's confidence has been badly affected by the theft. It ended with a conviction, but just a fine.
We need to take it a lot more serious because it's happening all the time now. It's happening to lots of families. I mean, I've read 3 in the past year in Dunfermline Sheriff Court that this has happened to families, you know, so they need to help the old because they're just as vulnerable as a child.
Hazel Goodall is in remission now from breast cancer. The family hope as they look to a happier future, legislation may be improved by lessons from the deception which so distressed her. Aileen Clark, reporting Scotland.